NHL hockey, we're back, baby. And that means fantasy waiver wire ads to prime your team for fantasy success. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hockey heads, fantasy fanatics, and degenerate gamblers, we are back, baby. NHL hockey is looming, and all of the ways that you can prime your team for down the stretch success is here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. What is good, my friends? Welcome back inside the lab, where we're always showing love to the everydayers, making us their first listen every single day. Steele, you know what it is. We are the #1 sports podcast network out there here at Locked On. I'm fired up for today's episode, my friend. I seriously am. And today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, that NBA profit boost and futures gets you entered to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Waiver wire ads. There are some angles here, Steele, that we've been covering out of the Olympics, ways to prime your team for success, but it's waiver wire options. I've got a whole bunch of players to talk about. Deeper cuts, regular names. Main takeaway here, the time is running thin to make sure that your squad's ready to go. So I'm fired up to hear who you're talking about on today's show.
Yeah, a lot of great matchups, a lot of great players we want to talk about, regardless of whether it's a continuation of the matchup before the Olympic break started, whether it's a new matchup this upcoming week. I have in a few leagues. It's actually my first week of a 2-week playoff matchup right now. So we're getting underway. The fantasy hockey trade deadlines are around the corner, I believe, at least in my leagues, they come up on March the 2nd. So they're right there. We got to talk about some mock trades, but regardless of whether it's a continuation of matchups or it's a fresh start, the goal is the same: adding value to your roster on the waiver wire. And we have a ton of value to talk about on today's episode. I have a lot of teams from the Western Conference, specifically 2 teams I want to talk about, but number 1 is the Anaheim Ducks. I want to start there because I think there is a ton of value, and there's a lot of players that actually are coming back from injury. So maybe let's start there. And we know that with the injury to Sidney Crosby, he is listed as day-to-day. He should be back for the Pittsburgh Penguins. You actually reached out to me and said Mikael Granlund could miss time. He's expected to be out for at least 2 to 3 weeks. So he will miss some time for the Dallas Stars. But a lot of guys are returning. This was a great time for people who had injuries, were rehabbing, had surgeries, and are now healthy and ready to get going. And that's why I want to talk about the Anaheim Ducks, because Leo Carlsson will be back for them starting on Wednesday, February 25th. He will be back in action. He's missed the last 4 weeks. Obviously, I think the last game was January 10th. But coming back from the Olympic break, and specifically, I want to talk about Mikael Granlund, because I thought he was tremendous for Team Finland. I thought he was a great captain. The veteran presence, the tenure in the league, the tenure with the on the international stage. There could have been a lot of leaders, and there probably were a lot of leaders there with Miro Heiskanen, Mikko Rantanen, other guys for Team Finland. But Mikael Granlund, I thought, was spectacular. Aho is a great one too. But looking at the Anaheim Ducks, getting Leo Carlsson back, you also have Mikael Granlund, again, who had a great Olympic run there. This is a team that is in a very good spot, but they're in a very they're in a very good spot. But it's also a lot coming back from the Olympic break, because it means so much. When you look at the NHL standings, Utah Mammoth, first wildcard spot.
Good point.
Anaheim Ducks, second wildcard spot. Kings, Predators, Sharks. I don't even want to completely let go of the Winnipeg Jets, who could potentially go on a crazy run the second half coming back from here. So it's a very important time of the season, especially for teams that are holding a playoff spot. So when I look at the Anaheim Ducks, 3-game schedule here, tough schedule actually: Oilers, Jets, Flames, and you get Leo Carlsson back. I think there's a lot of value here when you look up and down the lineup. Mason McTavish at 50%, Mikael Granlund 30%. He's got 27 points on the year. He on the first power play unit. Beckett Seneca, again, 46%. He shoots the puck a ton. He's got over 40 points on the season too. And again, when you get a guy like Leo Carlsson back into the lineup, I think it just gets everyone flowing. It gets everyone juicing. He's rehabbed. He's rested. He had surgery. He's ready to go. I'm expecting big things from this Anaheim Ducks team. I think you can find a ton of value down the lineup, especially with the guys I just mentioned. Granlund, Seneca, McTavish, if he's available. Alex Killorn's projected on the first line with both Leo Carlsson and Seneca. So I like this Duck team a lot.
Would have thrown Alex Killorn in the mix, and I had Mikael Granlund here as well, Steele. 50% on Fantrax, 30 on Yahoo, and actually, Oilers, Flames, and Jets, to me, is actually a great week. I don't think that's very tough at all, especially based on how those teams were playing headed into that break. 5-5-0 for the Oilers in their previous 10. The Jets, we know what they were doing, 3-4-3, and the Flames were 4-4-2. So
I just, sorry to cut you off, but I think with the Jets, with Connor Hellebuyck going on an absolute tear in the Olympics, and also, let's not forget, Kyle Connor, I don't know if you saw, but he kind of looked pissed when they were handing out the gold medals. Like, he got shafted a little bit, so maybe he comes back and has some fire under the bum as well.
There's definitely other angles to consider with what this means for players' energy. What I'm looking at here is Mikael Granlund all day. You mentioned it. He looks good. The deployment's there. The Ducks were 8-2-0 in their previous 10 headed into that Olympic break. I think this one makes a whole lot of sense, Steele. So thank you for highlighting the Anaheim Ducks, because that's what I wanted to do as well. And 30% on Yahoo, and I understand that Granlund goes hot and cold. This is the perfect time and a nice little sneaky ad that you go out there. You like what the Ducks were doing before, and I hope that it translates over, because a bunch of those names you mentioned will serve value. What I want to do here quickly before I turn it back over to you and break, I've mentioned these players ad nauseum. Marco Kasper, Dalibor Dvorsky, and Oliver Kapanen. And I think a lot of the value comes right off the top page. Marco Kasper right now, Steele, Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond form on that top line for Detroit. If we're talking about Olympic energy, perhaps one of the most attractive ways that you want to get a piece of some fantasy boom right now. How about Marco Kasper on that left side? Marco Kasper also gets a look on the second power play unit, and he is out there. Only 2 games for the Red Wings, Sens and Canes, but he is not owned. 5% on Yahoo, and I swear, jumping on Debo after that big performance. He was great all Olympics long. Raymond as well. Dalibor Dvorsky, I talked about it. Good Olympics. Thomas is still injured. He's getting deployed on the top power play unit. Kraken, Devils, and Wild. And then to wrap it up, I've talked a lot about Oliver Kapanen. We love what's going on with Montreal. He's going to return with Juraj Slafkovsky and Ivan Demidov on his wing. He gets to play on the second power play unit. You've heard all of my pitches about those players, but I think that's a nice trio of options that we've thrown out there, and I think you'd back me on this. Kasper, he keeps playing with Larkin. Kapanen, he keeps playing with a red-hot Slafkovsky. You might be adding and keeping those players.
Look, it's all about opportunity when it comes to those 3 players. When you look at specifically Oliver Kapanen with the Montreal Canadiens, he's surrounded by a ton of talent. He's playing top 6 minute, just like the other 2 guys that you mentioned. With the Montreal Canadiens being such a gold mine of a team, you really want to take advantage of those opportunities. I really like the Oliver Kapanen. We've talked about him a ton. Marco Kasper, he's had a little bit of a tough season. So maybe it's a little bit of a tougher sale, but obviously with Dylan Larkin coming back, I mean, it's 13 points in 57 games. It's nothing special. He had 37 points and 77 in his rookie year. So I think he has taken a little bit of a step back. He's gotten 2 minutes less of average ice time. But again, he hasn't lived up to that opportunity expectations of playing with guys like Raymond and Dylan Larkin. So maybe coming back from the break, if he's up there, take a good look at him, take a good chance. If it doesn't pan out, it's an easy drop. And then Dvorsky we mentioned. I mean, with Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou on the trade block, if they are traded, he seems to be the next guy up. I mean, Braden Shen, it's everybody in St. Louis is pretty much on the trade block, except for the young guys in Snuggerud and Holloway and Dvorsky, Neighbors. I mean, maybe if something were to crazy to happen, they end up getting traded, but I seriously doubt it. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity with all 3 of those teams, especially St. Louis and Montreal.
Just trying to get a piece of the action where it looks attractive to me and where perhaps some other GMs might not be looking. And you're totally right about a disappointment for Marco Kasper. Dalibor Dvorsky might be still eating minutes as a third-line center, and Oliver Kapanen is still a young player. However, I like all three of their games. You get a bunch of different angles, and right now the deployment is popping off. I would also throw a name into the mix that I will hold for after the break. I've got a couple of teams to capitalize on this schedule coming up on today's show. Rest of the week, we're here. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You want that NBA Finals live experience in person? FanDuel is giving you a chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here is how it shakes down. Use your profit boost on any NBA future. You're automatically entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about what team is making a deep run, it's the perfect time to lock in. Futures at this time of the year, nothing better. And now another layer of excitement. This trip, cash, and it could send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chances to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Steal. If I win, maybe I'll bring you, pal. Play your game at FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
And thank you so much for making Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button. Thank you so much for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already know what it is. But if you haven't already, go check out the Everydayer Club. You get access to ad-free audio feed for Locked On Fantasy Hockey or any Locked On channel you want to tune into. It's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every major podcast app out there. You also get members only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord servers, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. It's a great place to meet new people in the fantasy hockey realm, talk about some mock trades you have going on in your leagues. Again, during games, after games, we throw some big-time bets in there. It's all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. You can also use code DEADLINE ahead of the trade deadline for 1 month free. Boom. Again, that's code DEADLINE ahead of the trade deadline for 1 month free. Again, $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonfantasyhockey.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more about the Everydayer Club here on Locked On Podcast Network. Flip, we appreciate everyone out there. That's why we do what we do with the waiver wire targets every single week, throwing you the hot content here. Again, I wanted to talk a lot really from this Western Conference because
me too.
A few of these guys, obviously, it's a broken record. Like, we love these guys. We go back to them. It's going back to the well every single week because
why not?
It's just like, to me, it doesn't make sense how their percentage doesn't go up. Maybe it's a shorter league or a smaller league, and there's not that many. You don't need that many deep cuts. However, I really like the Utah Mammoth, and I think there's a lot of value when it comes up and down their lineup. Just like Leo Carlson, in the same regard, Utah Mammoth, they get a #1 center back in Logan Cooley, who has dealt with multiple injuries throughout the season. He started off red hot, gets injured. He hasn't played for a long time now, so he should be back and ready to go February 25th or whenever the Utah Mammoth's next game is, which, by the way, they got 3 games this week: Colorado Avalanche, Minnesota Wild, and the Chicago Blackhawks. So I'm looking at their team. 2 guys jump off the page immediately. #1, you know who it is. It's Lawson Crouse, playing and projected on that top line with Nick Schmaltz, who we just talked about having an incredible season, and a gold medalist in Clayton Keller now. So they're gonna be
easy
fired
steal.
up.
Easy. It's still fresh.
Lawson Crouse, 20% owned on Yahoo, 29 points, 147 hits, 91 shots on net. Projected on the first line with those 2 studs, I'm taking him all day. Along with Jack McBain, also got dual eligibility, center and left wing. 19 points, but he's a banger league beauty. 56 penalty minutes, 196 hits, 81 shots on net. Projected on the second line with Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther. Maybe they mixed it up a little bit, and you can maybe see Lawson Crouse on that second line, and maybe JJ Peterka goes up onto the top line. There's a lot of ways for them to mix it up in Utah, but as of right now, those are the projected lines coming back from the break, and I think those 2 guys immediately jump off the page for their value in categorical formats specifically, but again, projected for the opportunity of where they're playing.
First and foremost, I did want to touch on quickly, we win with class in Canada and we lose with class. Shout out to the Americans. They won that game. It's still fresh in the old gullet steel. And when you mention Clayton Keller with that gold medal, it's smarts. Maybe we'll talk about it more later in the week. All I got to say is with this Utah Mammoth team, because you would think when you mention these players that you did, Schmaltz, Guenther, Cooley, Keller, JJ Peterka even, this should be like an offensive dynamo, and really what they've hung their hat on this season, Steele, because you look at the power play, it's the second worst in the NHL. It's been goals against. 156 goals against, Steele. They're also up there. The blue line deserves a lot of credit is what I'm trying to get at, because they're in the top of the league for shots against as well. They have been really good this year on the back end, fourth in goals against. So I believe you're still going to see a lot more from this offense that really hasn't even caught fire to the expectations that I personally have had. And you've seen it on the power play. So if that happens and you're tapping into some of these players that you're highlighting, by the way, Lawson Crouse, I think, has entered into your boy territory, because you've definitely tapped into his value at multiple times.
He definitely has.
I like that very much, good sir. And let me talk about another West Coast team since you brought us out here. Kiefer Sherwood is back. I think everyone's kind of on to this now. He's going to be playing with Macklin Celebrini. That's all I think we really need to say there. Ownership is reflecting this. 70% on Fantrax, 52 on Yahoo. People, did we watch what happened in Milan? Macklin Celebrini's playing with Kiefer Sherwood, and he's only owned at 50% on Yahoo. Wake up and go get a piece of that right now, because what Macklin Celebrini was doing even before the break is seriously impressive stuff. And Kiefer Sherwood is now going to be the benefactor of that directly. So that's the obvious one. And you were just mentioning projected lines, and I think a lot of these will shake up. Michael Misa right now, Steele, in that middle position, William Eklund and Tyler Toffoli, if that sticks in the top six forward group for a young player in Michael Misa, who, had his growing pains and still needs a lot of time in the NHL to get seasoned. Power play unit, second center, that might be a really sneaky spot if this Sharks team continues to do what it did before the break, that you can get your hands on. 8% on Yahoo. But how about this? Up to 54 on Fantrax? I wanted to highlight the Sharks because they got the Flames, Oilers, and Jets, and they were absolutely on fire at times this first half. I think the Sharks are a team you want to be looking at.
This is how important it is. I mean, not just for the Western Conference, but obviously the Eastern Conference. We know how tight it is, but that's why I wanted to highlight a lot of these teams in the Western Conference, because it is just as close out west as it is where it is east. So you're not going to like this flip. I am going to highlight some gold medalists once again, but my boys, Matt Boldy, Quinn Hughes, Brock Faber, gold medalist of
Hughes
Team
is
USA.
still buckled.
Quinn Hughes is still recovering, but he's got a couple more days to celebrate and then get back into it. But when I look at the Minnesota Wild, this team's legit. When you look at the value they have up and down their lineup, it actually is very surprising that there is a massive gap between the fifth most rostered player on the Minnesota Wild compared to the sixth most rostered player. Joel Eriksson Ek is at 75%. He's the fifth most rostered player on Minnesota. Next in line at 6, Matt Zuccarello at 26%. It's a massive gap between those two guys. You got Zuccarello at 26%. Okay. You got Ryan Hartman at 18%. Tarasenko at 12%. Trennan, again, triple eligibility, center, left wing, right wing at 19%. There's a lot of value, whether you need some goal scoring, whether you need assists, power play points, a banger league beauty in either Urov or Hartman or Trennan. All those guys are physical. They can shoot the puck a decent amount. They're getting points. I think you can find a ton of value with those three guys, and that's why I wanted to highlight the Western Conference teams, because it's very important for them coming back from the break. 3 games this week: Colorado Avalanche, Utah Mammoth, and the St. Louis Blues. So a little bit of a mixed bag there with competition-wise, but I think those 3 players riding high. Hey, don't forget Billy G, who put the team together, because he's done a fantastic job in that regard. But Quinn Hughes, hopefully he's ready to go after much celebration with Team USA.
Ducks, Wild, Sharks, all of those are teams that if you're just trying to capitalize on volume, 3 games the rest of this week, those are some to definitely be considering. I've got a team on the East Coast, though, Steele, another team that has a few players that we might want to probably go a few rounds in the old ring with. However, I'm not doing that with you because I know you're practicing. Why don't you take us to break, and we will talk about a few more players to prime your team for the rest of the week.
And then, of course, we'll get some mock trades going. We'll get some big-time bets coming back up on Wednesday. But first, this episode is also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being at an NBA game, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, That part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without any hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. Pulled up the Game Time app, picked an upcoming Raptors game, and had tickets locked in within minutes. Love seeing the all-in price up front because there's no surprise fee at the checkout. Being able to see the view from the seat before buying also made the decision very easy. You get zone deals. They stood out. Choose the section. Game Time picks the seats, and you save a ton. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON at NHL, Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip. Let's go over to the Eastern Conference. I actually do have one more team from the West. We already mentioned it. Maybe I'll mention it real quick. We talked about the LA Kings. We know what's going on. Kevin Fiala's out of the lineup. He's injured. He's done for at least the remainder of the regular season. Don't have any updates on potential postseason if he's done. Possible to return. He's done. Fractured leg. There's lots of opportunity now. We talked about Quinton Byfield. He's still at 57%, but he's going to get some opportunity. Alex Laferriere, triple eligibility, center, left wing, right wing, 26 points on the season, 131 shots, 159 hits. Banger League beauty, actually, without the penalty minutes. But I like the triple threat there with those eligibilities for all positions. Anze Kopitar, he's not going to jump off the page peripherally, but maybe he still has some left in the tank for the LA Kings to make another postseason run. Corey Perry, he's one of my boys this year, 28 points on the year, 80 shots, 42 penalty minutes. I talked about Joel Armia. He's not going to jump off the page when it comes to all those categories I mentioned, but he does have 20 points in 55 games this season. He might get a good look in the top 6 forward group, especially with the with the addition of Artemi Panarin now in the lineup. Who knows what that's going to mean for all those guys I just mentioned, especially Alex Laferriere if he's centering that top line.
That has to be a team to watch. Yeah, the Kevin Fiala angle, and he is just such an important kind of supporting piece there that maybe hinders what could have been for that top 6, the best that it's looked in terms of at least on paper. Yeah, you don't know what Breadman's going to do, but you have a pretty good expectation. That hurts, but that's still a team for me to really watch because Darcy Kemper can steal you a series all day long. He's got a Stanley Cup ring.
Oh, 100%.
The blue line is more than – I think Drew Doughty looked sensational. 14 candidate. Yeah, he doesn't need to affect the game at the offensive end, but he still brings it in the NHL. That team has all of the pieces, at least before Breadman's addition, to me, to make a pretty solid run with him. I was really excited to see what they do. So I still am. Kevin Fiala's injury hurts. I like that you're talking about this team still heading out east for this Florida Panthers club. And I get it. The record is what they are this season, and they're near the bottom of the Eastern Conference. And a 4-6-0 record headed in to that break, that hurts. But we know the injuries that this team has faced up front. They're going to get there. They're getting healthy. Bobrovsky has not looked good. Do not write this team off for 1 second. And I think you'll back me on that. When I look at the record, though, yeah, okay, they haven't performed. But I look at a player like Eetu Luostarinen, who looked great for Team Finland, who is playing with Anton Lundell and Sam Reinhart and getting a really good opportunity steal. And then I look to a deeper cut, and I'm not going to even try and butcher Uvis Balskinis, Balinkis. Holy. Anyway, the angle here thank you. The angle for this team is Balinskis is playing on the top power play unit. And that's an angle you have to take a look at immediately. The second one is the deployment of Eetu Luostarinen and how he looked for Team Finland and the ownership. They have the Leafs, Sabres, and Islanders this week, Steele. So that is what better way to start back. Matthew Tkachuk looked pretty good as much you want to punch him in the head. He looked pretty good, and he will be back going full tilt for the Florida Panthers. 15% on Fantrax and 5 for Balinskis, and Eetu Luostarinen is only at 18 on Fantrax, and right now he's holding down that top wing spot with Anton Lundell and Reinhart. I think you take a look at the Florida Panthers and perhaps forget that this season has been a bit of a mess so far.
I'm thinking about Sergei Bobrovsky right now, because if I need anyone to get going, it is Sergei Bobrovsky.
No doubt.
Especially going into the playoffs right now. If they want any chance, and again, I'm not counting them out, but if they want any chance at making the postseason, it starts with Sergei Bobrovsky in the blue paint. He has not been great this season. Maybe this is what he needed, a little bit of a 2-week break. I mean, he already gets to live in Florida. Just chill on the beach for that time being, watch some hockey, come back, recharge, rejuvenated, and ready to go for the Florida Panthers. Those are all the waiver wire targets this upcoming week. Again, we'll drop some hot content moving forward over the next couple of days, especially with the fantasy hockey trade deadline coming. We'll throw some targets out there that you could get potentially in a trade before the deadline comes around. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you subscribe and follow so you get all of the latest episodes. Follow us on X at LO_fantasy NHL. And we'll see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.